Hello there, welcome to Business Daily on Trust Television. On this program, we bring to your screens factual and up-to-the-minute analysis on major developments in the world of business, economy, finance, commerce, and the stock market. We'll tell you what's happening, of course, with the numbers. I am your host, Christiana Amadou Otinya. Thank you for always joining us on the program. Let's begin with the headlines for today. We begin from the aviation sector. Now, the aviation sector witnesses more troubles as the cost of jet A fuel approaches 1,000 naira per litre. Now to Twitter. Elon Musk continues to shake up the Twitter space. In the midst of mass layoffs, its African office was also not spared. We'll give you more details on these stories on the Business Roundup segment of the program. I'll take a short break. When I come back, it'll be time to look at the stock market. Please stay. Welcome back. Now let's go straight into the stock market. We'll begin from the Nigeria exchange, talking about what's happening with the local buzz. Now, we saw the Nigerian exchange finish the week largely in positive territory. Now, as interest, we saw renewed buying of interest in FTN Cocoa, Geregu Power, and 12 others, and this helped prop up the Nigeria exchange as we are seeing 0.07% higher. Now, investors on the local bus took home 17 billion naira, adding to the market capitalization as bargain hunting activities were renewed on the local bus. Now, on the activity levels, now we saw a total volume of 705.92 million shares valued at 4.59 billion naira change hands in 3,472 deals on the floor of the Nigeria exchange. Equity cap settled at 24.11 trillion naira. Now let's go over to other African bourses. We go to Johannesburg Exchange, talking about what's happening in South Africa. Now, the market in Johannesburg opened largely higher, 0.19%. Now, it was in positive territory at 69,174. For Ghana, we also saw Ghana finish at 0.25%. A lot of the markets in Africa are, of course, monitoring what's happening on the global front. In South Africa, the power utility Eskom has warned that until one of its troubled Kusile power duct collapsed. Now, all load shedding is expected to come after the incident, and that's the focus, especially around what's happening with the economy, is also affecting or dovetailing into what's happening on the bourses in other parts of Africa. Let's go over to Wall Street. What's happening in the United States? U.S. stock futures slightly fell on Sunday as investors looked ahead to a week packed with congressional midterm elections as well as the latest consumer inflation number from the U.S. So it was a sea of green for finish on Friday, but the market is looking forward to issues around what's happening on the political front, talking about the midterm congressional elections and the inflation figures that are also expected. Now, Tuesday's midterm election will determine which party will control Congress and impact the direction of future spending in America. Now, Democrats currently control over the House and have a majority in the Senate. Now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average up 1.26%. For the S&P 500, it's up 1.36%. And the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite, as you can see here, up 1.28%. All the arrows here are significantly in the green and all pointing northwards for Wall Street. Now, let's go to Europe, the Eurozone. European markets open mixed territory ahead of a busy week in U.S. politics. Now, the tepid open comes after a busy week for markets last week, with central banks being in focus. We saw the Bank of England also raise rates highest since 1989, and that has been largely the focus for markets, talking about the decisions coming in from central bank. It was really a busy week for the markets, talking about what the market was focused on, largely talking about coming from last week. Let's go over to what's happening in the Asian Strait. Now, Hong Kong stocks led gains in the Asia-Pacific region Monday as China's trade data fell far short of expectations, making the first annual decline in exports since May 2020. Exports fell by 0.3% and imports also fell by 0.7%. That's talking about what's happening with China. Of course, the focus again is on economic data. The Nikkei 225 in Japan up 1.21%. In mainland China, the Shanghai climbed 0.23%, and the South Korea Kospi is up 0.99%. Now that's it for what's happening in the Asia market. Let's look at the commodities market and see what's happening with commodities now. Looking at the numbers you can see here is a mixed bag for commodities here. Now Brent crude is down 1.13% at $97.45 per barrel. Now there's really a whole lot of focus for the oil markets. The bulls and the bears are really grappling for supremacy as to what we're going to see this price end for the year 2022, and that's a large focus for market. Also, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, has raised its forecast for world oil demand in medium and long term, noting that oil demand will grow significantly by 23%. Now, the model by the International Energy Agency also suggested that the demand for fossil fuels will peak in the year 2035. So that's really a whole lot going on in the oil market, and that's affecting Brent crude, which is of course the international benchmark for crude oil. And we also know about the West Texas Intermediate crude. So those are like the two major focus. For Nigeria and West Africa, what we have here is currently the Bonny Light, but Brent crude is the benchmark for the markets globally. For the yellow metal gold is still staying around the 1,600 mark. Now, other agro-commodities are largely in the green, staying largely positive. Palm oil, $4,412 there, wheat still staying within the $800 mark, $849, and cocoa $2,434, up 2.61%. So for the month, to begin the month of September, well, for the month of November, I beg your pardon, we've seen the agro commodities stay largely positive for the market. But for Brent crude and the metal industry, talking about the bullion gold, it's been more of a topsy-turvy ride for those commodities. And investors are monitoring the market to see what the prices are going to cap at. Let's look at the cryptocurrency market. There's a whole lot of news around what's happening with hackers for that market. Now we are seeing hackers taking so much money out of the cryptocurrency market. And as of October 31, 2022, hackers have stolen double the amount of money from crypto protocols as of the entire last year. Now, crypto losses totaled nearly $3 billion this year, a quarter of which the attackers withdrew in the month of October. Now, we are seeing that this is the very huge, steep losses going on here for the crypto market. Bitcoin is at $20,776, still hovering around the $20,000 mark. Ethereum, $1,572. And for Binance Coin is at $334. So those are the numbers we have for you on the program today, from the local buzz here in Nigeria to other buzzes across the world, the commodities market, and of course the crypto, keeping a watch basically on these numbers, especially in the fast-paced world of business. Now let's quickly take you through what's happening in the roundup of business. Now, the steep decline of the Naira versus other currency has caused fear in the aviation sector, and some operators have warned that aviation fuel, which has increased by almost 400% in 2022, may reach 1,000 Naira per litre. Operators have cautioned that if it occurs, it may interrupt operations and cause them to make additional revisions to airline tickets. Concerns were raised over the weekend when the British pound at the parallel market exchange rate was over 1,000 Naira. Now, there are worries that the dollar, whose value has also been sharply rising against the Naira, may surpass the 1,000 Naira mark. Going over now to the tech industry, some workers at the Twitter office in Africa have stated that since Elon Musk completed the acquisition of the microblogging platform, there have been widespread layoffs that have impacted everyone. The change occurs a few days after the African team officially began operations at the Ghana headquarters. Up to 3,700 workers, or over half of Twitter's global staff, will be impacted by the purge. Many employees reported being locked out of their work accounts remotely last week. Although there have been layoffs in the Africa office, there are no signs of a complete shutdown. And that's the much we have for you for the business roundup segment of the program, bringing you business story, of course, as they're updated. Now, our focal point for the program today will be what's happening, especially with the unemployment situation in Nigeria. Some experts and analysts have tagged it as a time bomb, basically, that has gone off, talking about how unemployment continues to rise. And talking about data, with the current unemployment data stating that unemployment is over 33%, is a data we got from the National Bureau of Statistics for the fourth quarter of 2020. It then begs the question as to how much this challenge can be tackled if there is no recent data to address that. I will be joined on the program by my guest to speak to issues around how Nigeria can tackle the menace of unemployment. There's also the slant. Some have said that some Nigerian youths are not employable, and that is also affecting the rising unemployment situation. As Nigeria moves into the electionary season proper and the elections by the corner, what is the job creation agenda also being brought forward by those vying for the position of president of Nigeria in the year 2023? These are some of the issues that would be the crux of the matter on the program today. However, I'll hold my horses here and take a short break. When we come back, you will meet my guest and we'll get into the meat of the matter. Please stay.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
That's great. It's good to see you.
Welcome back and thank you for still staying there with us on the program. If you're just tuning in, this is Business Daily coming to you live from Trust Television. And like I mentioned earlier, the focus of the program today would be on the unemployment situation in the country, how basically that can be tackled and get more people to have jobs, well-meaning jobs in the country. I have my guest with me now. He is Kelechukwu Ogo. He's research analyst at SBM Intelligence. Welcome to the program, Kelechukwu.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us on the program. Just before we get straight to the matter, let's take a look at some research that we have put together on Business Daily. Now, according to the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, Nigeria's unemployment rate is 33.3%. 40% of Nigerian youths are unemployed. More than 60% of Nigeria's working age population is younger than 34. Unemployment for people aged 15 to 24 stands at 53.4% in the fourth quarter of the year 2020 and at 37.2% in the for people aged 25 to 34. Unemployment rate for women was 35.2% compared with 31.8% for men. Youth unemployment currently stands at 42.5%. According to the World Bank Human Capital Index ranking in 2018, Nigeria ranked 152nd out of 157 countries with an index of 34%. Underemployment rate in Nigeria stands at 22.8%. The employed population is fixed at 46 million, 20 million for women and 26 million for men. Individuals are in informal employment were fixed at 43 million, with 18 million being women and 25 million being men. Now, it's normally said that the fact or the data really gives a face to the situation currently at hand. Kelechukwu, I want to come to you now. These data that I just reeled out are, of course, from the fourth quarter of the year 2020, and we are currently in the fourth quarter of the year 2022, and there's no recent data that we can basically hold on to, or research analysts like yourself can hold on to be able to basically paint a picture of how this challenge can be tackled. How much development or how much can we address this problem when we do not have data to back it up?
Yeah, it's practically impossible because policymakers do not know the challenge facing them. They can't put numbers to it. If you can't put numbers to it, you have instances where you are over budgeting for the problem or you are under budgeting for the problem. But there are like structural issues around it. And we should also point out that in Q4 2020, we were dealing with the COVID pandemic. And the COVID pandemic would have given some form of coloration or affected the data, would have been an outlier as to unemployment because a lot of people were laid off at that time. And a lot of people started working remotely. There was a lot of structural change to how employment takes place. And now this is 2 years down. We don't have a data set that shows us if more jobs have been created with the recovery since COVID restrictions and all were lifted. We don't have the data that tells us if fewer people have been, fewer people are coming into the labor force. What that did Q4 2020 data told us was there was a massive reduction in unemployment from about 28% to, like you said, 22.8%. And that was because a lot of people left the labor force, not because underemployment is no longer an issue. So if we had a data set for unemployment now, it would tell us a different story. But we don't have that data. And like you said, this is election season and politicians, I don't know if they are doing surveys, the candidates, if they are doing surveys to underscore the problem, but they will be working in blind, whoever wins.
Kelechukwu, I want to ask you now. Speaking of you alluded to the fact that some of these issues are also structural, and the fact that policymakers are aware that we have issues like this on ground. Now, is one thing to be aware, and is one thing to also be concerned and take proactive steps to tackle the challenge. Do you think we are rattled enough as a people by these numbers?
You have to ask presidential candidates, the politicians themselves, if they are rattled. They will say they are, but I do not think they are. Some of the things that we need to do, we need to make the states economically independent. We need to make states economically viable. I think when budgets released, the last state for states report I saw from budget, I think about only three states were solvent. So how do you run a country with three solvent states? and the states are tied to the purse string of the presidency of the federal government or revenue allocation. When I was following, for example, the global economic crisis, at some point Detroit, which is the capital of Michigan in the US, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy because the three companies that run the Detroit economy, Chrysler, General Motors, and Ford, were facing economic challenges. But in Nigeria, even if a state is not solvent, if a state cannot pay salaries, probably go to the federal government for bailouts or go and see what they can get from back allocations. Therefore, there's no drive to boost their own economy because they know that they can borrow from the federal government, they can borrow from domestic market, they can borrow from the external market, and they will also have nominal money to spend from back. There's no backing, there's no shock, there's no there's nothing catalyzing them to be inventive with how they source money.
Kelechukwu, I also want to ask you, what innovative solutions can be employed to help bring down rising unemployment in the country? Basically, a lot of times we hear agendas on job creation. We hear we want to put so and so number into the sector. We want to put so and so number into the sector. And there's still a lot of people who are creating jobs for themselves, talking about the MSMEs subsector. What innovative solutions can we begin to look at to tackle the issue of rising unemployment?
Yeah, I should say that MSMEs are strong where there are weak social and socioeconomic structures. People have to fend for themselves because they know the government's not looking out for them, and they know that there are no big multinationals or supranationals that are absorbing the labor force. What solutions, like you asked, people say my ideas are outlandish, so I'm really sometimes scared about sharing them. But I've always had this idea that we should only have solvent states. Agriculture is the most is the sector of the economy that employs the most. And I'm sure a lot of that is underemployment because agriculture is seasonal. But imagine if you had a situation like you had with the Lagos Kebbi Lake rice thing. Say Kebbi was producing the rice and Lagos was packaging and marketing it. Imagine if you had that across different involvements to say, oh, they are selling to civil servants, or they are capping the price, they are subsidizing the price. So imagine if you had um, economic relationships between states where Zamfara is mining gold and maybe Edo State is processing that gold, and that gold is moving through an effective rail line, a rail line that is secure, a rail line that is safe. So you have other states into crop production. Crop production is the most viable aspect of agriculture in this economy,
Yes.
and then you have another state turning those crop products into processed stuff that then goes into the market and also gets exported. So, for example, maybe Oyo State is producing cocoa and maybe Anambra State is producing chocolate. And if you had this kind of economic relationships all along the agricultural value chain and all along these states, I mean, that's is the problem. That's for me one innovative way I think that the problem can be solved. Um, Another way basically would just be to address the structural issues of making the states independent, making states fight for their right to exist. I don't think that our lawmakers are ready to do that.
So you think giving the states more power to be able to tackle some of these issues will help allay a lot of this challenge we face with unemployment and unemployment across board?
Yes, if Rivers State was managing its oil resources itself and paying tax to the federal government, and there was oil theft, it would be easier for Rivers State within its borders because they also have money to pay police and the police security agencies. It would be easier for them, the governor, for the local governments to go to the communities and try to talk to the people and say, man, you're having your state. But right now, the people in Rivers State feel that they are serving the country and they are not serving their state or they are not serving themselves. Yes, you had that kind of setup where Rivers State was in control of all resources. The local government and community were big time players and participants in that oil economy in Rivers State. You'd have a situation where Rivers State is generating revenue and paying the government, not depending on the government to get revenue. I mean, look at the VAT fights that Wike and the Lagos State government tries to have with the
Okay,
generate a certain amount of VAT in my state,
yes.
and then I have to share it with states that are not doing anything viable, and I even destroying some of the industries that generate that VAT.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Kelechukwu Ogu, research analyst at SBM Intelligence. Thank you for sharing solutions that the country can, of course, and policymakers can take into cognizance to help tackle the situation of rising unemployment in the country.
Thank you.
And that's where we wrap it up for Business Daily today. We'll continue to, of course, monitor the space. We're waiting on the National Bureau of Statistics. The NBS boasts the state that him and his team are working to ensure that we get the latest unemployment figures. So we'll continue to watch that space and trust us to bring you update on that as they break. Now, thank you for also investing your time with us on the program today. Don't forget you can catch up on all the updates on our social media platforms, on news making the rounds in the polity and major news in the world of business. I am your host, Christiana Amodu Otinya. Enjoy the rest of your day and continue to stay safe.